Hi, everybody. How's it going? Who's heard of Blackout Haunted House? A couple of you. My name is Josh Randall. This is my creative partner, Kris Thor. We're both co-directors of Blackout. We created it 5 years ago. We have a video here. Let's see if it can introduce it for us. Otherwise, we'll talk you through it. Next. So, Blackout Haunted House started in 2009 in New York City. We're currently running in New York and Los Angeles. We're also going to be opening another show in Chicago this December. This is my partner, Kris. He'll talk a little bit more about how we started.
Hi everybody, I'm Kris Thor. I just wanted to go through and let you guys know a little bit how we started. But we were making theater, some weird ass fucking theater down in New York City, and we were having a lot of fun with it. We started by doing a lot of immersive theater. We were getting a little bit tired of doing sort of sit-down plays where you just sort of watched a play, you fell asleep for a little while, and then you went out to have drinks afterwards talking about how bad the play was. So we decided to put a play in a hull of a boat in the middle of March. And this was that play. This is actually the later extension of that play. It's a play called The Blind by Maurice Maeterlink. And we were getting really into the idea of sort of what the real was for the actor, what the real was for the audience member. So we were really putting audience members through things, like taking them through the hull of a boat, having the actor sort of walk up to them. The story of the play is actually that all the characters in the play are blind. And we had a hell of a time. I don't know if you guys can see the contacts that Rob is wearing there, but we had a hell of a time finding contacts that actually blinded the actors. So all of the actors in the play were always performing blind. And when we were performing in the hull of the boat, you can go next, I think the last of this is in the boat. The actors were, because the rivets of the boat, the rivets of the floor in the boat, that's why we actually chose the boat, so that the actors could actually block themselves by feeling their feet around the space. So we were already sort of looking at a lot of certainly non-traditional ways. The audiences for this play were 20 people, and after the play, if you want to go to the next slide, we cooked a huge ass meal for the whole audience, all of which was completely white. So there was like 5 different kinds of risottos, 5 different kinds of white soups, and 1 million spoons throughout the whole table. So all basically making the audience blind to what they were eating. So everybody had to try each other's bowls of soup and bowls of risotto. But at this point, the reason sort of we're bringing this up is this is sort of where we started in the theater world before we moved into sort of the fear experience world. I'll pass it back to Josh now.
Next, please. So in 2009, after working together for about 5 years, creating all this weird experimental avant-garde kind of theater, as Kris was saying, we were touching very briefly on immersive theater, creating interactive experiences. We decided in the summer of 2009, a little bit as a joke, to do a haunted house in the middle of the summer. That was a gimmick. It was literally not much more than a gimmick, and we just kind of thought it was funny, and we thought it would pay off a lot of the bills that we had been incurring from the last 5 years of doing theater, as one builds up in New York City. That's actually how Blackout started. But we realized very quickly that we had sort of struck a chord with people, and that this was working not only by creating this interactive experience, but also by choosing to do it not during Halloween, but doing it off-season as well. A couple of things that have always been the sort of core principles of Blackout, and some of these slides are going to indicate that to you. Simplicity has always been a really big thing for us. We've never really gone with big sets. It's always been something very simple, creating real life situations and the sort of fear that comes from within that. And of course, the three main things that set us apart from other haunted houses that have always been the core principles of Blackout are that you have to walk through by yourself, you have to be over 18, and you're allowed to get touched. Those are the three things. We like that, both inside and out. So those are the three things that always separated us from the other haunted houses. They've always been the core principles of Blackout. By going over 18, it allowed us to sort of step outside of that traditional theme park haunted house world and start catering the scares and the content to a more adult audience. Obviously, it worked. Something happened. We struck a chord in New York. It was the first show that we had done after working together for so many years that there were suddenly lines around the block. The first time that we did the show, it was only 10 minutes long. It was a $6 ticket, and you could purchase a shot of whiskey for $1 before you went in. As he was talking about earlier with Mindshare, oh, how quickly things grow in terms of insurance and all the other things that we now have to think about. Unfortunately, whiskey is no longer part of the experience, but it was always a really strong part of it from the beginning in terms of getting people in the environment and actually immersing them within this world. The other thing was that Blackout is not about monsters. It's not about vampires. It's not about people in costumes jumping out at you and saying, "I want to eat your brains." For us, the scariest thing was really just turning off the lights, and it was really one of the most effective things. And the simplicity of that decision to just turn off the lights and place a real person in front of you, whether they be doing something horrible or even not doing something horrible, the simplicity of that choice really affected everything and actually took the show to the next level. One of the most effective things we've always done that's been a staple of the Blackout experience since 2009 is what we call the dark room. To that, as I was saying earlier, that decision to turn off the lights and just put people in a pitch black room has always been one of the most effective rooms in Blackout. Our actors a lot of times wear night vision goggles, so you're never alone in that room. We're always there watching you, and it's the fact that somebody is in the dark there with you that usually gets most people. We also have a safety word at our haunted house. The safety word is safety. We took an average a couple years ago, and it came out that approximately 1 out of every 7 audience members will call the safety word. 9 times out of 10, they will always call it within that dark room. That dark room usually is towards the beginning of the experience. It's one of the best ways to sort of put people in the right frame of mind, ask them to come into this theater experience and focus on something a little bit different than the traditional monsters, vampires, and things along those lines. And there you go.
I'll talk a little bit more about that. One of the things that, because we've gone away from the sort of the monsters, the ghosts, the zombies, it's very difficult, I think, to rationalize your way out of Blackout. And similarly with the dark room, it's actually about creating a template for your own imagination. So that's to say, we have people come out of the dark room being like, "Dude, I can't believe you fucking stabbed me, man. That was so fucked up." And nobody touched them. And that's part of what the experience is that we're actually garnering something that goes around in your own imagination, realizing that we're never going to be scarier than what your own fears are. So we actually try to give you a template, like a tabula rasa for your own fears, and that's actually at the beginning of the design of what we try to do for all of our rooms. Another big thing that we do is nudity, and we all love nudity, and Blackout really loves nudity. But there's something that we realized sort of for the first time when we did it, we were a little bit scared to do it because you're one-on-one with the actors are touching you. Are you legally allowed to put a naked person touching an audience member? These were questions that we maybe still don't know the answer to. But honestly, like, it was sort of a thing. You know, you see zombies walking at people in haunted houses, and you're like, oh, this is so scary. But then you see, you know, a guy in his cock and balls walking at you, and you're like, oh my God, this guy's gonna touch me. Oh my God, he's naked. And I think that there's a very sort of real reaction that's happening in that moment, not just because of the nudity, not just because of the penis, but because it's so against the rules, and it's breaking a lot of the taboos, but it's real. It's a real person. It's a real naked person in front of you, and you are alone, meant to grapple with that. You have to grapple with that person by yourself. There's no one to grab onto next to you. So I think that's something that we found is very effective and ties in a lot to sort of the basic psychology of what we're trying to get at with Blackout. I think the final thing I wanted to talk about is we do a lot of interactivity. So I'll give you an example from a few years ago. This is actually a good example too. This guy, you know, would take your hand and sort of bet you that you wouldn't staple each other's hands with the staple gun. And I don't know if anybody has taken a staple gun to their own hand and slowly depressed the lever, but I promise you, no matter how tough you are, it is the scariest feeling in the world, and it's very, very real. Is there a staple in there? And that doubt that's in the back of your head, that doubt is what we play on, I think, and that is our best friend. If we can create any kind of doubt in the audience going, are these guys for real? Are they going to hurt me? Is it and that it's that little voice in your own head that we're really trying to play at, and that what we have spent the last 5 years really trying to hone. Similarly, a lot of our rooms will have interactive elements where something is taken from one room to the next. So that's to say, a man will vomit in a toilet, and then he will say, I want you to get the key out of that toilet that I just vomited. That for us, there's a little bit of a dare quality to that we enjoy. And we say, you know, you have to do this. If you don't do this, I'm kicking you out. You don't get to opt out of this. You have to get that key, because if you don't get that key, the next room where the woman is tied up with a chain, you won't be able to unlock her. So the whole thing sort of ties into each other, but it's a whole series of dares. It's asking people what their limits are theatrically, in terms of a fear experience, and what they are real. And at the thing that I think, when we started doing that interactivity, you started to see the lobby really go crazy. You know, people were like, oh my God, I can't believe I had to do that. I can't believe I had to do that. Did you have to do that? And that kind of buzz and that kind of energy was what we were looking for way back when we were doing all that crazy ass theater in New York. That was the kind of reaction that we were wanting from our audience members, but it wasn't until we found the format, Who Knew, of a haunted house, that we actually started getting that kind of feeling of people having real experiences in the lobby.
So just to go off of that, that's basically led us to 2013. We've currently been running for 5 years. We've done 12 shows in 5 years. Kris will talk about it in a second, but we will also do off-season events as well. We very much wanted for this 5th year and for the show that we're doing now to start taking Blackout into a new direction. So 2013, for the Halloween season, we created the show Blackout Elements. Elements is currently running in New York. It's also currently running in Los Angeles downtown, over at the Variety Arts Theater. Some of the things that we wanted to do with Elements this year, and with Blackout in general, is to start pushing more into the immersive experiential world, and start enhancing the experience for people. So not just creating a really strong connection between the actor and the audience member, but also between the audience member and the environment that they're in. So for example, in Elements this year, obviously based on the 4 basic elements, there's a rain room, for example. You will encounter wind, you will encounter heat in some way, shape, or form. So again, it's not just enhancing the interaction and the bond that you have with the audience, with the actor, but more along the lines of the environment that you're in. And that was one of the things that we wanted to create. Almost naturally came a stronger aesthetic as well, from a visual point of view and also from an experiential point of view. And so we put a lot more time and effort this year into the aesthetic of the experience and also what happens to you. We also are starting to move away from some of the more physical things that we've been doing in terms of the physical touch. We've been known for waterboarding people. As Kris was saying, we've been known for having you stick your hand in a toilet to get a key. Some of you may have read about having to pull out someone's tampon and suck on it. This is all very true. These things have happened, but it's also something that we've done in the past and that we want to keep moving forward. And so this year specifically, we're moving a little bit farther away from that into more of a psychological realm and trying to push the psychological aspect of just being in a room by yourself with this really intense environment or with this really intense actor, and pushing a little bit farther in that into that realm. And that's why and how we created Blackout Elements, which is currently running.
Just really quickly, because I know everybody wants to get to the party. One of the things that's important that we should talk about is we have two shows. We have the Halloween show, which is obviously a little bit more for the masses, and then there's the off-season. And the off-season, ladies and gentlemen, is really where the fun begins. That, for Josh and I, is a little bit of our playground. It's our laboratory. It's also significantly longer, significantly of a higher price, and usually by invite only until pretty recently. So that's where we know we have people who we can really push their limits and start to understand really what this beast is. So, a lot of the ideas that you'll see during Halloween are actually developed in the off-season. And the off-season's a very interesting time because it's a place, because of the audience members and because of their willingness and because of how crazy they really are, we are allowed to push their limits and actually see where the line is. And sometimes we go over the line, sometimes we don't go far enough, but we start to understand sort of in performance, in fear experience, how far do people want to take their fiction. And a lot of times in the off-season, the fiction will go well past just the experience. And this is something in general that Josh and I want to keep pushing with Blackout, a lot of in terms of the psychology, is we don't want the experience to sort of begin and end in the theater or in the warehouse or wherever we're doing it. We want it to begin 5 weeks before, and we want it to end 20 years later. And I think that the future of Blackout is going to be sort of immersive, not just in the sense of that 20 minutes or that hour that you go through it. It's actually going to be something that you sort of sign up for, and a community that you involve yourself in to sort of keep the fiction and the fear of fiction in your life exciting.
Thank you very much. Thank you.